Alright, let me know if this sounds familiar. Have you been looking at homes for months, chasing every single new home that comes on the market just to end up in a bidding war and not get your offer accepted? Or even worse, have you been thinking about buying a home but you're so hesitant now because you're looking at how high these home prices are? Man, it seems like sellers nowadays are charging an arm and a leg just for their house, and people nowadays are willing to pay for it. Even though you love the idea of moving into a new home, you don't want to spend every single dime that you've earned in your lifetime on this one home and end up house poor, right? It seems like in today's real estate market, getting a home at a decent price would be nothing short of a miracle. Well, want to know how to pull off a miracle in today's real estate market? Now, what if I told you that there was a way to actually negotiate with the seller and get a discount on buying a home, even in today's market? So for my bargain hunters out there, or anybody out there who's just looking to buy a home at a decent price without having to sell their soul and spend their life savings on it, this video's for you. I'm going to show you how to get a deal on a home in today's real estate market. And also, don't forget to hit that like and smash that subscribe button so you can be notified when I come out with more real estate tips and tricks in the future. Alright, let's get right into it. So how exactly do you save money and get a deal on buying a home in today's real estate market, which we all know is a heavy seller's market? The first strategy you can use to get a deal in today's market is to look at homes that have been on the market for a long time. Even in today's real estate market, where the inventory for homes is very low and it's a heavy seller's market, I've still noticed there are still a few homes that are sitting on the market that have been there for longer than the market average. Many homes that come on the market tend to sell within weeks and over listing price, yet you can always still find a few stragglers just kind of sitting there on the market. Why exactly is that? Let me break it down for you real quick. Normally, when a new home comes on the market, every qualified buyer in that area is going to want a piece of it right away, because all buyers know by now that any good home that comes on the market is going to get snatched up like that. With all the buyer competition on that home often ends up in a multiple offer situation, with people willing to bid over the asking price just to beat out everybody else just to get the home, because they think that's what they have to do in order to secure the home. And a lot of times that's true. They do have to bid over the asking price to be able to beat out everybody else and win. So that's what drives the home prices up, that buyer competition or that buyer demand. That's not necessarily the case for every home, however. What about those homes that sit on the market for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or even 3 months? When buyers see homes that have been sitting on the market for over the market average time, they feel that something is up with the home, because in today's hot market, why is this home not selling when every other home seems to be selling within hours? If the home is still sitting on the market, there must be something wrong with the home, right? Well, in most cases, you're right. There is something off with the home. Here's the thing though, there might not be anything wrong with the home itself. It might just be something with the marketing of the home. So for instance, maybe the home doesn't have very good pictures, or doesn't have any pictures on the inside at all. I've seen a lot of that lately. Maybe the seller simply overpriced the home, and even in this crazy market, buyers just aren't willing to pay the price that they offer it at. Or the issue could be some sort of minor repair that you'd be willing to deal with where maybe other buyers wouldn't. Just because a home has been sitting on the market for months doesn't mean that it's a terrible home and you should stay away no matter what. In fact, a lot of these homes can actually be a diamond in the rough, or the perfect place for a savvy buyer like yourself to get a deal. Why? Because just like you're aware that this market is very hot, the seller is aware that the market is hot as well. And if their home isn't selling within days or weeks of them putting it on the market, chances are that seller's going to get desperate. Once that seller gets desperate, then a buyer like yourself looking for a deal can come in and submit an offer lower than the asking price, or submit an offer at a discount, and the seller will be more than willing to accept it at that point, because depending on their motivation, they're gonna want to sell the home and get rid of it. Now, I'll cut to the chase and tell you that the main reason that most homes stay on the market over the average market time is because the seller overpriced it. Now, just because the seller overpriced it, a lot of buyers tend to think, oh, that seller is going to be unreasonable, and there's no reason for me to take a look at the home and submit an offer, because Once again, that seller is not going to listen to anything there that I want to say because they already priced the home at a price that I don't want to pay. So why bother with this home? What most buyers don't understand is the mindset of most sellers out there. Now, I'm sure other realtors can back me up here, but sellers tend to want to price their home over what they believe the home is worth so they can have what's called room for negotiation. Sellers want to price their home high because they're expecting buyers like yourself to come in with a lower offer and they're hoping to meet somewhere in the middle. If the home sits on the market for too long, however, that plan tends to backfire on the seller. And that's where you as a buyer can come in and have some leverage, because now that room for negotiation just got a lot bigger. Have your realtor run some comps on the property so you can decide how much that property is worth to you and then make an offer that's comfortable for you, not just at what the seller has the price listed at, because I'm sure by now they're definitely willing to negotiate a lot of money off of that price just to get the home sold, especially if the home has been sitting on the market for a long time. Now that's the way you can get a deal in today's market. Because chances are there's going to be no buyer's competition, no multiple offer situations driving the price up, none of that stuff. You can just get in and get the home at a deal or at a discount. My next tip for you is to look at homes that have minor repairs that you're willing to take on yourself. When looking at homes, we all hear about the brand new updated homes where everything is fixed. And we also hear about the other side, the foreclosure homes where everything needs to be rehabbed from the studs on up. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about homes where a seller has lived there for 20 plus years and maybe now the home needs some minor updates. Or maybe the seller has to move immediately and they just don't have the time to fix up all of those issues or minor issues, and they just want to sell the home as is as soon as they can. Homes like those tend to have a little bit of a harder time selling because most buyers, especially first-time buyers, don't want to see any issues with the home. This is their first time buying a home, so they're scared of buying a home that's going to end up being a lemon or end up needing a whole bunch of costly repairs that they weren't prepared to do in the first place. So any minor issue might be enough to turn off a first-time home buyer to the home. If there isn't as much competition for the home, then maybe you don't have to fight as hard to get the home, and maybe you can get in there and get the home at a reduced price. See where I'm going with this? There are actually a lot of minor home repairs that are pretty inexpensive to fix, especially if you're a do-it-yourselfer or a savvy buyer that doesn't mind using a little bit of elbow grease to get the home that you want. For example, let's say that the sellers were smokers and the home has a really smoky cigarette smell. Now that's enough to drive a lot of buyers off, but in the long run, it's pretty inexpensive to fix that smoky smell, especially when compared to what home prices are going for nowadays. Another example may be a home that has a lot of junk in it, or if the seller has a lot of stuff, so the home just doesn't show as well as other homes. The home itself might be just as good as any other home out there, but with all the stuff in the way, it might be hard for buyers to see. Buyers aren't going to be as willing to make offers on homes like that, so once again, that's where you as a savvy buyer can swoop in and try to get a deal. When you run across a home like this, if that home meets all of your needs, don't hesitate to make an offer on it. Once again, have your realtor run some comps on that property to see if the numbers work for you and try to fit in the estimate of those repairs as well. If you find out that those repairs aren't going to cost a lot to make, then by all means, make an offer on that property. See if you can find that diamond in the rough. Now, my next tip is something that I'm pretty sure you haven't heard too much about, but I'm going to give you this tip that'll help you save some money in the process, especially if you can find this. Now, my next tip is for you to look for a seller that has a problem and offer a solution to that problem. Now, what in the world do I mean by that? Every seller has a reason for wanting to sell their home, but some sellers' motivations might be a little bit unique from other sellers. For instance, what if you run across a seller who put their home on the market now, but they don't want to move from their home for a few months? Most buyers, when they look to buy a home, they want to move in immediately as soon as they can close. Another example might be that the home is a single family home, but the seller has a tenant in that home. Now, we all know that could be a problem because just because the seller wants to sell doesn't mean that tenant wants to move. So that could be a unique problem for a seller, especially if they can't get that tenant out on time. Let me give you an example of a buyer I work with who took advantage of a seller who had a unique problem. When we went to look at the home, we found out that the seller was actually going to take the home off the market because something happened with the kitchen cabinets and they were looking to replace the kitchen cabinets, but they wanted to take the home off the market until they got the new cabinets in because they don't want to show the home without the good cabinets, of course, because they were afraid buyers aren't going to want that home. Now, my buyer, being a savvy buyer, saw an opportunity, and we asked the seller that, hey, if we can put the offer on the home now, then, you don't have to worry about finding another buyer. We can just make a deal with you, of course, for a discount. And we don't really care what cabinets you put in, as long as you put in some decent stock cabinets. That way, my buyer was actually able to negotiate a deal on that property without having to worry about the buyer competition because the seller was taking a property off the market anyway. So she was able to get the property under contract. She actually got new kitchen cabinets and everything was good. She was able to actually get a deal on a home in this heavy seller's market. Another example of a buyer offering a solution to a seller's problem would be if the seller is selling a home that has a tenant in it, then that buyer is actually willing to wait until that seller is able to get that tenant out because, once again, we all know that can be a hassle. The buyer was actually willing to wait about 6 months because that's how long it took for the seller to get that tenant out. But, of course, in exchange for waiting that 6 months, the buyer negotiated a deal off the price. Those are just a few examples of ways that you can negotiate with the seller if they're having some sort of issue, and then see if you can offer a solution to their problem in exchange for a discount on the home. Of course, each seller's situation is unique, so it's important to just keep an eye out and see if there are any ways that you can help that seller out by offering solutions to problems that they have. If you can do that, you might be able to save a lot of money on a home in today's crazy real estate market. Alright, those are a few ways that you can actually pull off the miracle on finding a deal on a home in today's crazy seller's market. Any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to me through my website, which is BaileyAcresProperties.com, or by leaving a comment below. If you don't know, my name is Rob Bailey, realtor in the Chicagoland area with Arnie Realty Inc. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good day.